Hi there, welcome to Fantasy Hub. I'm Mia, your storyteller. Today's story is filled with heartache, discovery, and a twist you won't see coming. So let's begin.
The email came on a Tuesday that felt like any other Tuesday in my carefully ordered life. Historic beach house needs complete renovation. Flexible budget, urgent timeline. The address was in Seaview Heights, old money territory where I'd only dreamed of working. I should have known it was too good to be true. The house was worse in person. Much worse. Rotting wood groaned under my feet as I climbed the front steps, and the wraparound porch sagged like a broken promise. Paint peeled from the siding in long, diseased strips, and several windows were boarded up with plywood that had warped in basalt error. The whole structure looked like it was held together by stubbornness and prayer, but the bones were good. Beautiful, even. Victorian architecture with craftsman details that spoke of an era when builders took pride in their work. The kind of house that could be magnificent with the right vision and enough money to make miracles happen. That's when I saw her. Lila emerged from the shadows of the front door like something from a dream, or maybe a fever. Sun-kissed skin that seemed to glow in the late afternoon light, wearing frayed denim shorts that had seen better summers, and a white tank top that made her look effortlessly perfect. Her dark hair was piled up in a messy bun secured with what looked like a pencil, and when she smiled, my carefully constructed world tilted sideways. "You must be Miranda," she said, and her voice was honey over broken glass. "I'm Lila Moore. Thanks for coming out on such short notice." She was barefoot, I noticed. Her toes were painted coral pink, and there was a silver ring on her second toe that caught the light when she shifted her weight. Everything about her seemed casual, unplanned, free, the complete opposite of my structured existence. "The house has character," I managed, trying to sound professional while my brain cataloged every detail of her appearance. Layla laughed, and the sound was like wind chimes in a summer breeze. "That's a polite way of saying it's a disaster. Come on, let me show you the full extent of the damage." She led me through rooms that smelled of salt and thyme, pointing out water damage and structural issues with the kind of casual expertise that should have been my first clue. The kitchen was a maze of outdated appliances and cabinets that hung at dangerous angles. The living room boasted a fireplace that probably hadn't been safe to use since the Reagan administration, and the stairs ... God, the stairs creaked like a haunted house soundtrack with every step. But there was something else. Something in the way Lila moved through the space, her fingers trailing along walls and door frames like she was reading Braille. This wasn't just a house to her. This was personal. Family property? I asked as we stood in what had once been a sunroom, now filled with broken furniture and boxes covered in dust. Something like that. Her voice went quiet, distant. It belonged to someone I cared about, someone who isn't around anymore. I wanted to ask more, but there was a wall there. Something she wasn't ready to share. So instead I focused on what I knew. Measurements and materials, timelines, and budgets. That's when she handed me the mason jar. "Homemade lemonade," she said with a grin that was pure mischief. "My specialty." The liquid was suspiciously pink, and when I took a sip, it tasted like summer and secrets. There was something else in there, something stronger than lemons and sugar. Something that made my cheeks flush and my inhibitions relax. "So," Layla said, settling onto the dusty floor with her legs crossed, that silver toe ring glinting in the dying light. "Can you save it?" I sat down across from her, close enough to catch her scent, vanilla and salt and something uniquely her. The house? Absolutely. It'll take time and money, but the bones are solid. With the right approach, this could be stunning. And what about me? The question hung in the air between us, loaded with meaning I wasn't sure I was ready to. Unpack. My throat went dry. You? That's unclear. Her laugh was dangerous music, and I felt myself falling before I even knew I was off balance. We spent the rest of the afternoon going through the house, room by room, her vision mixing with my expertise in ways that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. She wanted bold colors where I would have chosen neutral. She dreamed of open spaces where I saw necessary walls. But when I sketched out her ideas, they came alive on paper in ways that made my heart race. You're terrible at following design. Rules, I told her as the sun began to set, painting the broken windows in shades of amber and gold. Rules are overrated, she replied, biting her lower lip in concentration as she studied my sketches. That tiny gesture hit me like a physical blow, and I had to look away before I did something unprofessional. That's when she mentioned the sleepover. The power's been out for weeks, she said casually, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. I've been camping out here while I sort through everything. There's a mattress upstairs and plenty of wine. You could stay tonight, get a real feel for the space. Every professional instinct I had screamed warnings. This wasn't how consultations worked. This wasn't how I worked. I had boundaries, protocols, a reputation to maintain. But when Layla looked at me with those dark eyes, waiting for my answer, I heard myself say, okay. The storm hit just after midnight, rolling in from the ocean like the wrath of God. Rain lashed against the boarded windows, and wind howled through gaps in the old structure that I was suddenly acutely aware we'd need to address in the renovation. We'd spent the evening sprawled on the single mattress Layla had dragged into the living room, surrounded by paint samples and fabric swatches, takeout containers from the Thai place down the road, and an increasingly empty bottle of wine. She changed into an oversized sweater that kept sliding off one shoulder, and I traded my professional blazer for a paint-stained t-shirt I'd found in my car. Tell me about your other projects, she'd said, curled up beside me with her bare feet tucked under my thigh like it was the most natural thing in the world. So I did. I told her about the minimalist penthouse that had taken 2 years to perfect, about the historic mansion where I'd spent 6 months sourcing period-appropriate fixtures, about the beach house renovation that had launched my career. But as I talked, I realized how hollow it all sounded. Beautiful spaces, perfect execution, satisfied clients, but nothing that had ever made my pulse race the way this broken-down house and its mysterious owner did. What about you? I asked. What do you do when you're not inheriting disaster? Properties? That wall came up again, subtle but unmistakable. A little of this, a little of that. I travel a lot for work, import-export stuff. Pretty boring, really. It wasn't boring. Nothing about Layla Moore was boring. But she was lying, and we both knew it. The power went out during a particular violent clap of thunder, plunging us into darkness so complete I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. I heard Layla moving, felt her warmth as she settled closer to me. Guess you're stuck with me, she murmured, her breath tickling my ear. Her knee brushed against mine under the blanket she'd thrown over us, and I felt electricity that had nothing to do with the storm. This is highly unprofessional, I whispered, but my protest was weak. Everything about this situation was unprofessional. The wine, the intimacy, the way my heart hammered whenever she was near. Then fire me, she said, and her fingers found my sketchbook in the darkness, tracing the edges of the pages where I'd drawn her vision of the house. Another crash of thunder, closer this time. In the brief flash of lightning that followed, I saw her face inches from mine, saw the way she was looking at me like I was something precious and dangerous at the same time. That's when my mood board hit the floor, forgotten as Layla's lips found mine. The kiss tasted like wine and rain and possibilities I'd never dared to dream. Her hands tangled in my hair, and I pulled her closer, deeper, until there was no space. between us and no thought beyond the way she felt in my arms. Later, much later, as the storm raged outside and we lay tangled together on that makeshift bed, I tasted salt on her skin from the ocean air or tears or sweat. I couldn't tell. But I knew with crystalline certainty that I was ruined for. Any other woman, any other love, any other life than one that included Layla Moore. "You're going to wreck me?" I whispered against her throat. Her laugh was soft, breathless. "Maybe we'll wreck each other." I decided then that wrecking balls weren't just for demolition. Sometimes they cleared the way for something better. The next few weeks passed in a blur of permits and contractors, of stolen kisses in dusty corners and late-night planning sessions that had less to do with renovation and more to do with mapping the geography of each other's bodies. Layla was like a drug I couldn't quit, intoxicating, dangerous, and absolutely necessary. But there were things that didn't add up. She had money, clearly. The renovation budget she'd approved was enough to restore the house to its former glory and then some. But when I asked about financing, she was vague. Family trust, she'd say, or insurance settlement. Never the same answer twice. She traveled constantly, disappearing for days at a time with explanations that were always just detailed enough to sound real, but never specific enough to verify. Business in Miami or meeting suppliers in Atlanta. She'd return with gifts. Exotic coffee, handmade jewelry, once a bottle of wine with a label I couldn't read, but never any real details about where she'd been or what she'd done. And then there were the phone calls. I'd be going over electrical plans or discussing paint colors when her phone would buzz, and she'd excuse herself with an apologetic smile. But I caught fragments of conversations that didn't match her cover. Story, code names, dollar amounts that made my stomach drop, references to packages and deliveries and the Miami situation. I told myself it was none of my business, that I was falling in love with a woman who valued her privacy, and that was her right. But late at night, when she thought I was asleep, I'd hear her pacing the floor above, talking in hushed tones to people whose names she never mentioned. The truth came out by accident, the way truth usually does. I was in the study, measuring for built-in bookshelves, when I noticed something odd about the wall paneling. One section didn't quite line up with the rest, and when I pressed against it, it gave slightly. Old houses were full of hidden compartments, servants' passages, dumbwaiters, priest holes from more paranoid eras. But when I managed to work the panel open, what I found wasn't historical. It was a safe. A very modern, very serious safe built into the wall behind the false panel. And it was open. Inside were stacks of cash, multiple passports with Lila's photo but different names, and a collection of burner phones. But it was the ledger that made my blood run cold. Pages and pages of transactions. Coded entries that spoke of a business that definitely wasn't import-export. At least not the legal kind. You weren't supposed to see that. I spun around to find Layla in the doorway, but this wasn't the woman I'd fallen in love with. This was someone harder, colder, with eyes that calculated threats and responses with professional precision. "What is this?" I demanded, holding up the ledger. "What are you involved in?" Her face shut down completely. "You need to leave, now." "Layla, whatever this is, we can figure it out. We can—" "No." The word was sharp enough to cut. "You don't understand. You need to go, and you need to forget everything you've seen here." That's when we heard the cars, multiple vehicles moving fast down the narrow lane that led to the house. Layla cursed in what sounded like 3 different languages and grabbed my wrist hard enough to bruise. "Listen to me very carefully," she hissed. "In about 30 seconds, this place is going to be full of federal agents. You're going to tell them you're here for a renovation consultation, nothing more. You don't know me beyond that, and you've never seen anything unusual. Play along, or we're both dead. The front door exploded inward before I could ask what. She meant FBI, everyone on the ground. Now, the next few minutes were chaos. Agents in tactical gear flooded the house, shouting orders and clearing rooms with military precision. I found myself face down on the dusty floor with zip tie restraints. Around my wrists, Lila beside me in the same position. But she wasn't panicking. If anything, she seemed almost relieved. Agent Morgan, one of the team leaders said, kneeling beside her. "You okay, Agent Morgan?" "I'm fine, Rodriguez," she replied, and her voice had changed completely. Gone was the honey-sweet tone I'd fallen in love with. This was all business. But we need to move fast. The Kozlov shipment comes in tonight, and if we missed it because of this blown cover, your cover's intact, Rodriguez assured her. We've been monitoring their communications. They still think you're Lila Moore, art dealer and money launderer extraordinaire. Art dealer, money launderer. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Special Agent Leah Morgan, because that's who she really was, had been undercover for months, maybe years, building a case against what I was quickly learning was a human trafficking operation that used high-end art sales to move money and people across international borders. And I'd stumbled into the middle of it. What about her? Rodriguez nodded toward me. Laya, because I couldn't think of her as Lila anymore, looked at me with something that might have been regret. Civilian contractor. Wrong place, wrong time. She's clean. You sure? The timing seems convenient. I'm sure. Her voice was firm. Miranda Cole, interior designer. I've been running background on her since day one. She's exactly who she says she is. Since day one. While I'd been falling in love, she'd been investigating me. The thought made me sick. They cut my restraints and helped me to my feet, but my legs felt like jelly. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about love, about the woman I'd been, ready to give up everything for, was crumbling around me. I'm sorry, Leah said quietly as the other agents busied themselves with evidence collection. I never meant for you to get involved. Get involved in what? I snapped. I don't even know who you are. Something flickered in her eyes, hurt, maybe, or disappointment. You know me better than anyone? I know Layla Moore. I don't know you. Agent Rodriguez materialized beside us. We need to debrief both of you, but separately. Morgan, you know the drill. Miss Cole, if you'll come with me, we'll get this sorted out. As they led me away, I looked back to see Leah watching me with an expression I couldn't read. The woman I thought I loved was gone, replaced by a federal agent who'd been playing a role. But those eyes were the same ones that had looked at me like I was something precious during the storm. I didn't know what to believe anymore. The FBI field office was exactly what you'd expect. Fluorescent lighting, bland furniture, and the kind of coffee that could strip paint. I spent 6 hours answering the same questions in different ways. How long had I known Layla Moore? What had she told me about her business? Had I seen anything suspicious? The truth was, I had seen suspicious things, lots of them. But I'd been so intoxicated by love, by lust, by the sheer magnetic pull of her presence, that I'd ignored every red flag. I felt like an idiot. A dangerous, love-struck idiot who'd nearly blown a federal investigation because I couldn't keep my hands to myself. Agent Rodriguez was patient but thorough. You're not in trouble, Miss Cole, but Agent Morgan's cover has been in development for 2 years. Her infiltration of the Kozlov organization is the closest we've ever gotten to bringing down this trafficking. Ring, if her identity is compromised. People die, I finished. She told me. Did she tell you she volunteered for this assignment? that she's been living as Lila Moore for so long that sometimes we worry she's forgotten who she really is. I thought about the woman who'd kissed me in the storm, who'd traced the edges of my sketchbook like she was memorizing the feel of paper and dreams. Had that been Layla or Leia? Did it matter? What happens now? I asked. Now you go home and pretend this never happened. Agent Morgan continues her assignment. And hopefully, in a few weeks, we'll have enough evidence to bring down one of the largest human trafficking operations on the East Coast. And after that, Rodriguez's expression softened slightly. After that, she'll need to decide who she wants to be. Lila Moore dies with the case. What Laya Morgan does next is up to her. They released me with a phone number to call if I remembered. Anything else, and a stern warning about the consequences of discussing an ongoing federal investigation. I drove home in a daze, my carefully ordered life feeling like a stage set that someone had forgotten to strike. For 3 weeks, I heard nothing. I tried to work, tried to focus on other projects, but every client consultation felt hollow. Every design decision felt meaningless. I'd had a taste of something real, something electric, and everything else paled in comparison. Then I saw the news. Federal agents arrested 12 individuals in proton raids across 3 states, effectively dismantling what prosecutors call one of the largest human trafficking rings in recent memory. The investigation, dubbed Operation Safe House, resulted in the rescue of 43 victims and the seizure of assets worth more than $50 million. There was no mention of Agent Leah Morgan or her undercover work. No acknowledgement of the woman who'd risked everything to save those 43 lives, but I knew. I'd seen the determination in her eyes, the way she'd transformed from the woman I loved into a federal agent with a job to do. I wondered if she was safe. I wondered if she ever thought about me. I wondered if anything we'd shared had been real or just part of her cover. I was about to find out. She showed up at my apartment on a Thursday night, 3 months after the arrests. I almost didn't recognize her. Gone was Layla's bohemian style, replaced by a conservative blazer and slacks that screamed government employee. Her hair was shorter, styled in a way that looked professional but somehow wrong on her. She looked like she was wearing a costume that didn't quite fit. "Hi," she said when I opened the door, and her voice was somewhere between Layla's honey and Agent Morgan Steele. "Hi." I didn't invite her in. Couldn't. The last 3 months had been about rebuilding my walls, reconstructing the safe, predictable life I'd had before she'd blown through it like a hurricane. "The case is closed," she said. "All convictions, thanks to the evidence we gathered. 43 people are free because of that investigation. Congratulations." She flinched at my tone. "Can we talk, please?" Against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let her in. She looked around my apartment, clean lines, neutral colors, everything in its place, and I saw her recognize the difference between this space and the passionate, chaotic designs we'd created together. "You're angry," she said. "I'm not angry." I single quotes, I struggled for the right word. "I don't know what I am. Confused, hurt, relieved it's over. Is it over?" The question hung between us like a bridge neither of us was sure we should cross. "You tell me," I said. "Who are you today?" Layla Moore, the mysterious art dealer? Agent Leah Morgan, federal investigator? Someone else entirely. She sat down on my couch, carefully, like she was afraid of disturbing the perfect arrangement. Of throw pillows. I don't know anymore. I've been undercover so long, sometimes I forget which parts of me are real. What about us? Was any of that real? Her eyes met mine, and for the first time since she'd walked back into my life, I saw the woman who'd kissed me during the storm. That was the most real thing I've ever felt. It scared the hell out of me, because it compromised your case, because it made me want to quit. because for the first time in my career, I had something more important than the job. Do you have any idea how dangerous that is in my line of work? I sat down across from her, careful to maintain distance. So what happens now? Do you go back to being Agent Morgan? New assignment, new cover, new life. I could. My supervisor offered me a promotion, actually. Task force leader based out of DC. It's everything I thought I wanted. Thought? She was quiet for a long moment, studying her hands. When she looked up, there were tears in her eyes. The house is finished. The non sequitur threw me. What? The renovation. I hired another contractor after everything. It's beautiful, Miranda. Everything we dreamed it could be. But it's empty, and I can't bring myself to live there alone. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to see it. Because I want you to understand that Layla Moore might have been a cover identity, but the woman who fell in love with your vision, who stayed up all night planning a future in that house, that was me, the real me. My heart was doing dangerous. Things in my chest, lie ... I know I don't deserve a second chance. I know I lied to you, put you in danger, made you question everything, but I love you, Miranda. Not as Layla Moore, not as Agent Morgan, but as whatever mess of a woman I actually am when all the pretense is stripped away. And the job? I turned down the promotion. I'm taking a leave of absence, maybe permanent. I need to figure out who I am when I'm not playing a role. I wanted to believe her. God, how I wanted to believe her. But I'd been burned once by trusting too quickly, by letting my heart overrule my head. I need time, I said finally. She nodded, standing to leave. I understand. But Miranda, when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll be at the house. Our house, the one we designed together. After she left, I sat in my perfectly ordered living room and tried to convince myself that letting her go was the smart choice. The safe choice. The choice that wouldn't leave me questioning reality and nursing a broken heart. But safe choices had never made my pulse race. And I was beginning to realize that a life without racing pulses might not be worth living. I waited 2 weeks before I drove out to Seaview Heights. 2 weeks of sleepless nights and distracted days of starting conversations with friends about federal agents and undercover work before remembering I couldn't actually discuss any of it. 2 weeks of staring at my phone, wanting to call her but not knowing what to say. The house stopped me in my tracks. It was perfect. Every detail we'd discussed, every wild idea Layla had dreamed up, every compromise we'd negotiated, all of it brought to life with a skill and attention that took my breath away. The wraparound porch gleamed with fresh paint. The windows sparkled in the afternoon sun, and through the open front door, I could see hardwood floors that glowed like honey. I found her in the kitchen, wearing paint-stained jeans and an old t-shirt, putting the finishing touches on a cabinet door. She looked up when I walked in, and her smile was tentative, hopeful. You came, she said. You finished it. Without me. I had your plans, your vision. But you're right, it's not the same without you. I walked through the space slowly, taking in every detail. The open concept living area with the restored fireplace. The sunroom filled with plants and morning light. The master bedroom with French doors that opened onto a balcony overlooking the ocean. It's beautiful, I said, and meant it. It's empty, she replied. I've been staying here for 2 weeks, and it still feels like I'm camping in someone else's dream. We stood in the living room where we'd first kissed, where federal agents had arrested 12 people, where everything had begun and ended and maybe, just maybe, was beginning again. Who are you? I asked. Really? She was quiet for a long moment, considering. My name is Leah Morgan. I'm 32 years old. I have a master's degree in criminal justice and a black belt in Krav Maga. I've been a federal agent for 8. years undercover for the last 4. I like terrible reality TV and expensive wine, and I can't cook to save my life, but I make excellent coffee. She paused, meeting my eyes. I fell in love with an interior designer who saw beauty in broken things, and I've been trying to figure out how to be worthy of that vision ever since. Leah ... double quotes. I know I can't undo the lies. I know I can't give you back those months of not knowing who I really was. But I can promise you this: no more undercover work. No more false identities. No more secrets. Just me figuring out how to be a person instead of a persona. I studied her face, looking for tells, for signs of deception. But this woman standing in our restored kitchen, vulnerable and hopeful and scared, was exactly who she claimed to be. No pretense, no performance, just Leah. And terrified, I admitted. Of me? Of this? Of feeling this much for someone? Of building a life with a woman who spent years being other people? Then we'll figure it out together. One day at a time, one truth at a time. She held out her hand, palm up, waiting. An invitation, not a demand. I took it. The next 6 months weren't easy. Love, it turns out, is a lot like renovation. You have to strip away the old damage before you can build something new. And the process is messy, expensive, and frequently frustrating. Leah had to learn how to be herself without a cover story. Simple things that most people took for granted: expressing preferences, making decisions, having opinions, had been suppressed for so long that she'd forgotten what she actually liked versus what Layla Moore or Agent Morgan would have chosen. I had to learn how to trust again. Every time she was late, every unexplained phone call, every moment when she seemed distant or distracted, my mind would spiral back to that day when I discovered the safe and realized nothing was what it seemed. We went to therapy, both together and separately. Dr. Sarah Chen specialized in relationships affected by law enforcement careers, and she helped us navigate the unique challenges of rebuilding trust when one partner had been professionally trained to deceive. The skills that make someone good at undercover work, she explained during one session, are the opposite of what makes someone good at intimate relationships. Compartmentalization, emotional distance, the ability to lie convincingly, those can be assets in the field and poison in a partnership. But we worked at it. God, how we worked at it. Leah threw herself into renovation, projects around the house with the same intensity she'd once brought to federal investigations. She learned to tile bathrooms and install ceiling fans, to paint, trim work, and plant gardens. Her hands, which had once handled weapons and surveillance equipment, learned to handle seeds and paintbrushes. I learned to live with uncertainty, to find comfort in the moments when she disappeared to take a phone call from her former supervisor, updating him on her decision to resign permanently from undercover work, to trust that when she said she was going to the hardware store, she was actually going to the hardware store. Slowly, carefully, we began to build something real. There were setbacks. The night she woke up screaming from a nightmare about the trafficking victims she'd helped rescue, and I realized how much trauma she carried from her years of undercover work. The morning I found her staring at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, touching her face like she wasn't sure who was looking back. Sometimes I still feel like I'm pretending, she admitted. Like the real Leah is someone I made up too. Then we'll figure out who she is together, I told her. No rush, no pressure, just ... exploration. And we did explore. We traveled, not for cases or covers, but for pleasure. We took cooking classes where she burned everything and I couldn't stop laughing. We went to therapy and book clubs and wine tastings, doing normal things that normal couples do. We fought too. Real fights about real things, money and chores, and whose turn it was to deal with the contractors fixing the guest bathroom. It was wonderful. Boring, domestic, absolutely wonderful. But the best moments were the quiet ones. Sunday mornings in bed, reading the paper and drinking her excellent coffee. Evenings on the porch, watching the sunset paint the ocean in impossible colors. The way she'd come up behind me while I worked at my drafting table, resting her chin on my shoulder to study whatever design I was developing. I never thought I could have this, she said one night as we lay tangled together in our bedroom, ocean breeze stirring the curtains. What? Peace, normalcy, a life that's mine instead of a character I'm playing. I kissed her temple, tasting salt and contentment. Is it what you want, really? It's everything I want. By spring, I knew I was ready to ask the question that had been growing in my heart for months. Not because I was certain of the answer. Love this deep, this transformative, doesn't come with guarantees. But because I was certain of the asking. I'd planned it carefully, the way I planned everything. Not a public proposal. Leah had spent too many years avoiding attention to appreciate grand gestures. Something private, meaningful, connected to our story. One chose the anniversary of the night we'd first kissed, when the storm had knocked out the power and we discovered that some kinds of electricity don't require outlets. I spent days perfecting the setting, candles throughout the house, her favorite playlist queued up, a dinner I'd actually learned to cook without burning, but Leia had her own plans. I came home from a client meeting to find her in the garden, behind the house, covered in dirt and sweat, planting what looked like an entire nursery's worth of flowers. Roses and jasmine, lavender and honeysuckle, all the blooms we'd talked about during those early design sessions. What's all this? I asked. She sat back on her heels, brushing hair out of her eyes and leaving a streak of soil across her forehead. I figured if we're going to grow old together, we should have a garden to grow old in. My carefully planned evening dissolved into something better, pizza eaten on the back steps, wine drunk from coffee mugs because we were too tired to, find proper glasses, and a proposal that came naturally, without rehearsal or script. Marry me, I said, pulling the ring from my pocket as we sat surrounded by the scent of new plantings and possibilities. Not as your designer or your girlfriend or any role either of us might play. Marry me as Leah, the woman who makes terrible coffee but excellent conversation. The woman who learned to plant gardens and fix broken things. The woman who taught me that sometimes the most beautiful structures are the ones that survive storms. She looked at the ring, a simple band with a stone the color of sea glass, and then at me, and her smile was bright enough to power the whole house. Is that a yes? I asked when she didn't speak. That's it. Took you long enough, Cole? She said, echoing words she'd spoken in another life, when she was Layla and I was just beginning to fall. The kiss tasted like sea salt and new beginnings, like coffee and honesty and the promise of all the ordinary. Extraordinary days ahead of us, Dot. We married 6 months later in the garden she'd planted, surrounded by friends who knew our story and family who'd learned not to ask too many questions about Leah's career change. Dr. Chen officiated, pronouncing us partners in life's ongoing renovation project. The house has become exactly what we dreamed it would be, not just a beautiful space, but a home. My design studio occupies the sunroom, where I work on projects that challenge and inspire me. Leah has turned the old study into an office where she writes crime novels. Surprisingly, though she insists they're absolutely not based on personal experience. We've learned to live with imperfection. The kitchen island still has ring. Stains from the night we stayed up too late drinking wine and planning vacations. There's a crack in the living room wall from the minor earthquake last spring that we've decided to leave as a reminder that even the strongest foundations can shift. Some evenings when the light hits the windows just right. I remember that first day when I thought I was just consulting on a renovation project. I had no idea I was walking into the love story that would redefine everything I thought I knew about home, about trust, about the difference between a house and a sanctuary. Leah says the same thing happened to her, that she came to this house thinking she was just maintaining a cover identity, never imagining she'd find the person who would show her how to stop performing and start living. The other day, I found her in the master bedroom, sitting on the window seat we'd designed together, staring out at the ocean. She was holding a letter, her official resignation from the FBI, finally processed after months of paperwork and psychological evaluations. Any regrets? I asked, settling beside her. She leaned against my shoulder, solid and warm and wonderfully, completely present. Only one. My heart skipped. What's that? I wish I could tell those 43 people we helped rescue that their freedom led to mine too. That in saving them, I somehow saved myself. That's the thing about love I've learned. The real kind, the dangerous kind, the kind that rewrites your DNA and reconstructs your dreams. It doesn't just change you. It radiates outward, touching lives you'll never know about, creating ripples that extend far beyond your own story. Sometimes, late at night when the ocean sounds like breathing and Leah sleeps peacefully beside me, I think about the woman I used to be, the one with clean lines and predictable patterns, who thought love was something you could blueprint and build according to code. She wasn't wrong, exactly. Love is about construction, but not the kind I understood then. Real love is demolition. First, tearing down walls you didn't even know you'd built, exposing foundations you'd forgotten existed, clearing away the debris of old fears and failed relationships. It's messy, dangerous work that requires trust in your partner and faith. In the process,